Hello friends, welcome to the Miss Ink Stamps YouTube channel. This is Lauren Taylor and I'm grateful to have you here for a card making video. For our card today, we're going to be using products from the Magic Collection from Miss Ink Stamps. I've got the Fangtastic stamp set and coordinating dies, the A2 Castle Scene die, the Bone Chevron stencil, and the Night Sky stencil set. I will bring in the Eieio frame die set later on in this video. We're going to start with stenciling. So I've cut a piece of Kraft cardstock to A2 in size, which is 4¼ by 5½, and I'm going to use some low tack tape to attach it to the back side of my bone chevron stencil. I'm going to do two different colors. I'm going to grab some distress ink colors. I will start with tea dye, which is a light brown color, and then later on I will bring in some hickory smoke just to darken up the edges a little bit. So I'm going to be using a blending brush just to add that color. I'm going about maybe 1.5 inches onto each of the four sides of this panel. You won't see a lot of it because I'm going to do a little bit of layering, so I'm not covering the whole panel, but wanted to make sure that when I layer on my panel that's going to be smaller than this, it will show the chevron bones on all four sides, and I don't have to go all the way to the center of this panel. I brought in that hickory smoke, and then I'm going to bring in my brown blending brush one more time just to blend those colors together. I wanted it to have a darker edge, so I thought those two colors created a really nice pattern on this Kraft cardstock. I am going to grab some watercolors. I love my Starry Colors watercolor pigments, so I will grab that, and I'm going to use the white color. It's almost like a silvery white within these gold colors. So I grabbed a paintbrush and I'm going to splatter that all over the background, again focusing on the edges of the card. I will then set this aside to dry and we'll move on to our next stenciling. So once that is drying, I'm going to grab some white cardstock. I just cut it in half, so it's just half of an 8½ by 11 size piece of paper. And I'm grabbing my moon stencils, again the Night Sky stencil set, and I'm going to start with the smaller moon, the mask for the actual circle moon, and I'm going to grab some distress oxides this time. To make sure that this circle mask doesn't move while I'm ink blending, I'm going to grab some repositionable tape runner, and I'm going to add just a little bit of that tape to the back side of my circle moon stencil, and I'm just going to put that right onto my cardstock. And I'm trying to leave plenty of room because I'm not really sure where my moon is going to be when I die cut this into a panel, so I went just like top center area. And for the glow around the moon, I am using Distress Oxide in Weathered Wood. It's like a grayishy blue color, and I thought it would look nice in a blue night sky and kind of give off that moon glow. And then for the next color, I'm bringing in Faded Jeans, and I'm going to blend in between those two colors. So I'm adding just some color around that first circle that I made with the Weathered Wood, and then I'll go back and forth between the two colors and try to create a little bit more of a seamless blend between the two. So I'm going over the moon because there's a mask there. I'm blending it into that Faded Jeans, and I'm going to go back and forth until I like the concentration of color on my cardstock. Once I'm happy with that, I will move into my final color of the blues, which is Chipped Sapphire. And again, I'm going to go all the way around the circle that I've created with my Weathered Wood and Faded Jeans. And then I'll grab the Faded Jeans Dome Foam Blender and blend it into the Chipped Sapphire. Just go back and forth. I even bring back in the Weathered Wood. And I'm going to just do my best to create a more seamless blend coming out of the moon into the darker night sky. So once I'm happy with that, I'm going to bring in just a little bit darker color, some black soot, just around the corners. I end up not seeing very much of this after I cut my panel, so you can skip this step if you are going to be replicating this card. After I was done, I brought in that same kind of white gold watercolor and splattered that to create some stars. I'm a little bit impatient, so I'm going to grab my microfiber cloth here and just pick up the excess water, and then we can remove the moon mask. Now my repositionable tape left a little bit of residue on my moon, but I have this eraser that removes adhesive, so I'm just doing circular motions to pick up that adhesive that was left over on my moon. Now I'll grab the next stencil, which is the, I guess you could say the mask, the outside of the mask, so the circle, but now I'm coloring in the moon. And I brought in Lost Shadow Distress Oxide, and I'm completely covering in that circle. Then I'll take the next part, which creates the details of the moon. And I thought about going a little darker with another Distress Oxide color, but I decided just to do more Lost Shadow. So like tone on tone, just add a little bit more ink, make it a little darker through the craters and the texture of the moon through this next stencil. And I know it's a little hard to see here on camera, but it has a really nice, just like tone on tone look on the final card. Now I brought in that frame die set, and I'm going to use the smallest rectangle that has the stitch details. I'm just making sure that it's going to cover what I want on my bone chevron background, and then I'm going to die cut this. But before I do that, I did die cut the castle out of the A2 castle scene die out of black cardstock. I'm not doing any layering. There's a lot of great detail pieces you can die cut to build on your castle, but I just wanted the silhouette. And I know that the castle is a little bit higher on the left side, so when I cut out my moon, I'm going to place my frame so the moon is more in the upper right hand side, so that way the moon will be viewable like far away, and it won't be hidden by any of the castle. So I'll go ahead and run that through my die cutting machine, and I'll pick up my dies. And you can see here now I have my panel with my moon, and it's just going to be nicely placed in that upper right hand corner. Now I'm going to work on building up my scene, so I will grab my dies. As you saw, I have the castle die out of black cardstock. It also die cut a little bit of just like a rolling hill look, just a thin black piece as well. And I'm just going to use that at the bottom to create a little bit more dimension. So I want this panel to fit onto my blue, so I'm trimming off just a little bit off the bottom, and then I'm trimming it to be the same width as my blue moon panel. And I'm going to glue this to the bottom of that panel. So I'm going to use some liquid adhesive and cover the back side of the castle. I'm going to tap off some of the glue because it was showing through some of the windows. And I'm going to glue that right to the bottom of that moonlit panel. I will also glue on that rolling hill, that die cut there. It's a little too wide because again, this is from an A2 frame, but I'm going to go ahead and glue it on, and then I will just trim off the excess that is on the right there. So once that's in place, I'll go ahead and just grab some scissors and trim that off it's a little piece, so it was easier than bringing out the guillotine trimmer. And that panel is ready to go, and it will go on the center of my chevron. So I'll just go ahead and get my glue and glue that right onto the center of that panel. I'm using my Pear Blossom Press notch here for 1/4 inch just to make sure that it will fit onto the front of that panel perfectly centered. My werewolf here is going to go on the right. I did stamp him in ink on 3 Blackout ink, colored him in with Olo markers, and then before I die cut him out, I stamped him again with Nocturne VersaFine Clair, which is a black pigment ink, and just to darken up those lines. I added some 1mm foam adhesive behind him, and I'm adding him to the bottom left of the card. I wanted him to be kind of opposite of the moon. And I'm going to stamp a sentiment. I decided to go with Love You to the Moon and Back. I thought it was perfect, and I brought in more of that black cardstock that I used to die cut my castle. I'm going to grab some anti-static powder and add it to that black cardstock since I'm going to be embossing. And I'm going to use a clear embossing ink. I'm going to stamp it a few times, make sure that there's plenty of ink there. And I brought in a super fine white embossing powder from Ranger. It's a detail, so it will, stick nicely to thin letters like my sentiment here. So I'm going to go ahead and pour that onto the black cardstock. And once I'm done covering it and it looks pretty good, I'm just going to tap off, make sure I don't have any extra powder anywhere. I'm going to put that away, and then I warmed up my heat gun and melted down those embossing powder, little plastic beads basically, to stick to the embossing ink. And I have my white sentiment on black cardstock. I just used a towel to pick up that excess anti-static powder, and then I'm going to fussy cut around it just a little bit so it gives more of a bubble look. I love when sentiments, have a cut around them. I just think it looks really clean. And I'm going to grab more of that 1mm foam adhesive and attach it to the back of my sentiment. And I'm going to add it to the upper right hand of the card. I thought about putting it over the castle, but I didn't want to hide a bunch of the castle. And I figured since the card is kind of going from the bottom left to the upper right, that was a good place for the sentiment. I'm going to add some adhesive to the back of this panel and attach it to a top folding A2 card, and that will finish up our card today. Let me know what you think of this Magic Collection fandom theme card. I really like how the panel is like the background and my character is kind of coming off the panel because he's on the left and bottom. I really like the layout. Let me know what you think down below. You can find everything that I use from Miss Ink Stamps down below in the description of this video. Stay tuned for even more inspiration here from Miss Ink Stamps. Thank you so much for watching. Happy crafting and have a wonderful day. Bye!